if Trump goes all in and he launches an attack on Iranian infrastructure the way that he's threatened to do, yeah, then they could do real long-term, extensive, permanent damage to those oil and gas fields. So that's what we're looking at. It's between short-term catastrophe and long-term catastrophe.
Yeah, well, the thing is with the short-term catastrophe, if it starts to hit, we run out of our strategic oil reserve, and then the market actually begins to reflect the real price of oil, the futures market does, and we say like, oh man, we're screwed. I think there's going to be absolute outrage around the world, and it's going to turn into this blame game, right? And who are they going to blame? Obviously, they're going to blame Trump, but here in the United States, we'll be blaming, everybody will rightfully be blaming Trump as well, but people will also just be shifting the blame. Like, why did this all happen? It's because of Israel, right? Like, this is where I think the blame is going to have to be shifted. The whole world is going to be screaming. We're already hearing some pretty loud shouts, but it's just going to get fever pitch screaming, and you're going to need to lay the blame somewhere. And it's so obvious to me that it's the United States, Trump's administration specifically, but Israel is the one that made this happen, because Trump was too weak to be able to say no to Israel. Like, this was clearly not in our interest. There was no reason to do this. Iran posed no threat to the United States. We went out of our way, and Marco Rubio even said that, why did we do this? Oh, because Israel was going to go do it, and we just figured we had to go along with them because we couldn't say no to them.
Right.
We know that's what happened.
Right. And we know that actually in past administrations, the Israelis tried the same thing. This is what John Kerry said when he was Secretary of State under Obama. And they tried the same thing. We're going to go, and they said, well, fine, go. We're not following you. We actually made it clear. They had this understanding that this was really disastrous. We're not doing that. But Trump was the fool that went along with it.
Yeah, so I just feel like if it gets this crazy and everybody's screaming at Trump about, like, what did you do? Surely at some point, won't he throw Israel on the bus? It's like, the Israelis convinced me. I don't know if he'll say it exactly like that, but it will come out like, well, it was, Israel it's really Israel's fault. That's what surely he does. He will try to shift the blame in some way.
I think there's a real possibility of that. And I've heard other people say that too. That's something that we've talked about earlier. And it's been, because just looking at his personality, he's never going to say, okay, yeah, I made a mistake, fellow citizens, he's incapable of saying that. I think that's clearly the case. But he could shift the blame. I think that may be, at some point where he's tried everything. He realized there's no rabbits in the hat, that all his, various harebrained schemes failed, and that he has a true disaster on his hands. There's no getting out of it. He might just say, it's all their fault.
What would that do if he did that? What does that mean for Israel and the United States? If a president actually just said, look, everything, all the conspiracy theorists were right, and we got screwed over by Israel. They have occupied a lot of our institutions, and it is true that we have been captured, and our institutions, our government, and by this one crazy genocidal state.
Yeah. Well, Trump is not going to be sophisticated. That's the problem. It's like, even when he's right, he doesn't even know how to really explain his position very well. So, he'll say a lot of crazy stuff, but he really could at some point point the finger at Israel. And that's going to, we'll just say, okay, really, of course, that it's not like the Israeli forces are going to say, oh yeah, you're right, you caught us, okay, but they're going to fight really hard, and it's going to become really nasty. And the accusations of anti-Semitism, are going to be flying, but I don't think they're just much weaker than they once were, and those smears just don't work the way they did in the past. So, it could, if that happens. I'm not saying, I don't know that Trump is going to do that, but I think it is certainly possible. It's something to consider. If he does, then we're going to have, a huge conflict, something, maybe not a real shooting war, but almost the equivalent of it, within the media, within politics. It's going to be really because, they have all their crazies there who are going to fight tooth and nail. but I think it's going to
Right.
wake up a lot of people who are already, have become very, very skeptical of Israel. Again, as all um, the public opinion surveys show.
Right. And I think Israel is going to just lose whatever little support it has. And I think one of the main reasons is because it just seems like the Israeli firsters and just Israelis in general, they have no ability to take any accountability. It's like, at least try to say like, okay, yeah, maybe we went a little bit too far, or
Yeah,
maybe we made a mistake here. That just does completely devoid of that ability to
right,
say that, oh, we made a mistake. It's like the whole world is suffering this. I mean, look what you did to Gaza.
right.
Look what you did to
Yeah,
Lebanon. Look what's going on in the
yeah,
West. Just no recognition, like, oh, maybe we went a little too far. It's just not there, and
right.
that's one of the most frustrating things. It's just
Yeah,
like I've never met anybody like that could just be like refuse to take any accountability,
right,
always shift the blame, and always say that, oh, it's somebody else's fault, it's not my fault.
right,
It's just like, what kind
right.
of,
Oh,
it's weird that there's a whole society like that. Like, that's so crazy.
yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm painting too broad of a
Well,
brush. I
not
know
by
that there are
much.
some,
Again, I do follow the Israeli media closely, and they're just, um, and there is, yeah, very little recognition. Again, when it comes to the Palestinians, there's a small part of the population that does have a conscience and has some awareness of that. But when it comes to Lebanon and Iran and whatever, it's just like there's this total faith in the IDF, and a refusal to acknowledge excesses, except maybe on the margins. I've exaggerated that somewhat, but not by much. Just by and large. Right. It's just that, yeah, we're doing what we have. Of course, we occasionally, at the very best, you have some leftists saying, yeah, occasionally maybe we go a little bit too far in Lebanon or something like that. But essentially, they're behind what's happening there. All of them are, except for certain individuals. That's the country. And so, um, yeah, yeah, in Israel too, I think you'll just see a circling of wagons so that happens. Oh, the great specter of anti-Semitism, here it's happened now. It's, Donald Trump has shown his true colors. He too is an anti-Semite after he's given you everything you wanted, for such a long time.
yeah, that's what they'll say.
Yeah,
It's just, oh, look, this anti-Semitism's got to him too.
yeah,
It's the insanity. I was just thinking as well, like, with Iran, I understand why they're able to take so much pain and suffering, and they can outweigh the United States in this blockade, because it's existential for them. Trump has said that Iranian civilization will die tonight. He made that threat, and it's very clear that the Israelis have no qualms in mass murdering civilians, and that this is truly existential. It is not existential for the United States. We chose it, so this is strange. But I'm wondering, is it Iran has shown itself with a lot of restraint? Was Iran ever really an existential threat to Israel, or did Israel make this whole monster themselves? Did they
yeah.
make, because
They
I don't
have,
think Iran would.
I think there's no question about it. They created this whole monster. They could have worked out deals, with Iran. Iran
Not
was
saying that Iran's a monster, by the way.
yeah,
I'm just saying the
right,
monster of making themselves, making an existential threat to themselves by their actions.
right. The thing
want
is
to
that
clarify.
they recognized a long time ago that Iran was a real rival, the one, remaining rival to their power that constrained their freedom of action, because it's a large country, strong technological base, whatever. So it just presented at least a potential threat to them. But there is never any evidence, actually you can't see since um, the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran hasn't invaded any country. It hasn't invaded one. Israel has constantly invaded countries. Iran hasn't attacked Israel, never did. It's only in response to Israeli attacks. And you can even go back centuries. I mean, Persia just was not, in the last few centuries of its existence, was not an aggressive power. I think over the last, I've heard 300 or 400 years, and it did not invade any other country. You just don't find any evidence for that. Now, it's a country that has been attacked. It was immediately attacked by Iraq with the support of, the West and the Gulf states. And, this very cruel war was waged against it. They thought that, okay, yeah, they're weak right now. They're disorganized. Let's crush this, this new republic. And it went on for 8 years. Anywhere from 200 to 500,000 Iranians were killed, many of them killed by chemical weapons, the precursors to which were supplied by Germany. Um, and it's been constantly the victim of all kinds of attacks. Don't forget also the airliner, the 290 civilians on that airliner that was shot down by the U.S. The cruel economic sanctions that led to the deaths of children and patients and so on because the Iran wasn't able to get the pharmaceuticals that it needed. It's gone on, and all the assassinations, and there's really nothing. I mean, we have to invent incidents like the Khobar towers that had nothing to do with Iran, to pretend that they were aggressor, that they were going. They've also just shown themselves to be very rational. I mean, we paint this picture as the mad mullahs. They've been cautious. They've been rational. They've always, shown a willingness to negotiate, to work. They're clearly concerned with their own security, and it's for obvious reasons. They're very, very justified and be worried about their own security and trying to, to protect themselves, and not by attacking other countries, but by trying to work out a modus vivendi. They've tried again and again with the U.S. We had the JCPOA as the most famous example, but another, I think a lot of people don't know, or they've forgotten that when, following the September 11th attacks in 2001, Iran was one of the first countries to reach out and said, here's an opportunity. We can help you because we have a common enemy. This is true. These were not Shia terrorists. These were Sunni extremists that attacked Shia too. And he said, we can help you. We'll help you in Afghanistan. We have a lot of connections. Remember, I don't know if you remember that, we worked with the Northern Alliance. That Northern Alliance was actually kind of set up by the Iranians. And then they made all those resources available to us, to help us to drive out bin Laden and topple the Taliban. They went out of their way to be helpful. And did we reciprocate in any way? Did we actually, show any kind of goodwill? Or did we, when they extended the olive branch, did we accept it? No, we took everything they gave us, and then we continued to slap sanctions and attack them and so on. And so the whole thing, this notion that this was an aggressive, irrational power, it's a complete inversion of reality. The reality is that, it's Israel and the United States that are the aggressive powers that are constantly threatening the peace of Iran. You can just say theoretically, well, they're a powerful state. So, well, does that give you a right to destroy them? I think I've gone in the past, I've mentioned Cato in the Roman Republic, who was always saying, Carthagio delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. It wasn't that Carthage was attacking an imminent threat, but it was the only real rival to Roman power. And I think this is his thinking. It's like the Israeli thinking. It's just like theoretically one day maybe they could attack us, so we need to destroy them first. But obviously that's the law of the jungle. That's not what we're supposed to be. It's not supposed to be acceptable. And we're seeing that play out before our eyes right now.
Yeah, and this constant argument that somehow Israel is this bastion and symbol of Western civilization is just, it's so damning to Western civilization that we say like, oh yeah, somehow. Is it possible we could just do a little 180 and be like, okay, now Iran, you're our allies, Israel, no, I mean, that's what I think so many of us want to see.
Yeah.
I would love if the Iranian people and the Americans could, because I know Iran would be open to that. Yeah. I mean, I think they understand, like you said, they're open to, they don't harbor ill will to American people. It's our government and what we're doing to them. Yeah. And the fact that they've taken it on the chin so nobly for so long, I just feel like, these are just pretty stand-up dudes. Let's work with these guys.
Yeah.
And not why are we with this insane guy that's just picking fights with everybody, taking your money, getting your car and running into crowds of people and then saying, bail me out of jail and give me another car. Don't take away his keys. He's just like, I just don't get it. Right. I just don't get, and we're getting to this point, and I think it will happen. We talked about just how the economy is going off a cliff, and we're in this illusion to think that it's not that bad, but it's going to get really bad. When that happens, I hope that's where this goes. We finally understand we got to cut ourselves off from this country. You know, we got to work with these other countries like Iran, like China, you know, Russia. Like, it would just how great of a world it could be if we could just not have this mindset where it's this any power that has some sovereignty, we need to destroy it, you know, and they have to all be under the thumb of the United States. When it's just so clear that we don't have the ability to impose that anymore, right. That we are trying to, we have 20th century weapons and we spend way too much money on them. We're trying to shove them into this 21st century war with Iran. And how's it going? It's not going well at all. We can't even get close to the coast. You know, well, we can maybe end it there. I'll go on. I'll rant about this for way too long. It's just madness to me. It's just so insane.
Yeah, it is. And it really is. You know, that's just not an exaggeration. It's really, I'm sure future historians are going to go look back at this time. It's going to be a long time trying to understand what happened. You know, and it's not just saying, okay, the U.S. and Europe is in its own way is just equally crazy. It's just kind of has a different flavor of insanity over there. But, you know, as this tsunami is just starting to hit them now, you know, the energy crisis, they're cheering on the Ukrainians as they attack, you know, the energy infrastructure of Russia, and which has, you know, I don't know that they're having all that much effect, but has some effect, and they're exacerbating the problem, the very problem that's going to destroy Europe, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think the only thing that's going to wake people up, at least some of these leaders, and maybe enact real change, will be real pain, will be some real destruction in the West. And, you know, I'm living here in the West. I hate to see it, but I think it has to happen. I just don't understand why we have to go so far of the way to piss everybody off, to just make everybody our enemy. It's like it's impressive how well we do that. Like, it's I just don't get it.
Right. Again, just saying that just that that unipolar moment was something that we just cannot let go of. There was a time, you know, briefly, where at least we could think we could do that. We can make enemies of, you know, all our rivals, and it didn't matter because we're more powerful than all of them put together.
But why?
Yeah.
But why even do that to begin with? That's what I'm saying. It's just such a psychotic mentality and behavior.
Right. The fact that you could do it still would have made much more sense to our benefit if instead of sanctioning Iran, we traded with them, and, you know, it would be very much to everybody, to the advantage of both sides.
Exactly. Like if China, you know, we instead of trying to like starve off China from chips and do everything like this, like what if we help them and they benefit, and their technologies now benefit the world, and we're part of that world, it helps us too. It's just so simple. Now you got me all worked up. I think we can end it there, Dan. Right. Okay. All right. Have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.